Most of you know me. I'm Mike Anderson, Senior Internal Wholesaler here at AIM. Pleased to have what looks like it's going to be a really large crowd joining us today, including a lot of folks that we don't normally see on webinars. And that, I think, validates something that we have been watching occur for a while, which is that the awareness of long-term care is, and the need for this coverage is as significant as it has been in a long, long time. And there are a number of different reasons for that. First and foremost is this concept, if you will, of the LTC payroll tax. Many of you are probably familiar with what happened in Washington. I know by some of the names that many of you were involved with what happened in Washington. And that is setting the stage for other states. New York, Pennsylvania, California are believed to be in the next batch, and the way that legislatures do what they do could mean that another state might bubble up sort of out of nowhere and get moving forward. And it's an important thing to note before we get into the nuts and bolts of the webinar. One of the things that we believe is happening is that there's a collective holding of the breath going on out there in the market as they wait for the 1st of July to get here about 5 weeks from now, because at that point in time, the LTC payroll tax in Washington will go live, and you'll start to see the first collection of that tax for folks who did not get the exemption. You'll start to see that about the middle of July. And we feel as though there's going to be sort of a sigh from folks. Okay, yes, they did pull it off. They made it work. They're collecting the money, all of the things that people didn't believe were going to happen. They felt like the good fairy legislation destroyer was going to come roaring in and wave a magic wand and make it all go away. That's not going to be the case. It's never even potentially been the case with this. And so that happens, and that's a big piece of that's driving a lot of the interest that you're seeing out there. So with all of that preamble here, let's take a look here. Today's agenda. You guys can read, so I'm not going to read this stuff for you, but we're going to spend the next few minutes and look overall at different ways to configure the benefits to give your clients the most bang for their buck and enable you to get them to a point, we call it, where they get to a point where it's a price point, if you will, where affordability lives, where they're willing to move forward and get a process started with this. And it is important to note that there's a method to all of this madness. Mutual of Omaha's product was custom built by the team here at AIM and our sister company Golden Care. We've been working with Mutual of Omaha on this series of products going back to 2005. All right. When we built these products, we understood we would get to a point in time where we were going to need max flexibility to keep prospects, policyholders, et cetera, to keep them engaged and to keep the process moving forward. Along the way, you can see some of the different numbers and some of the pieces, parts. The cash benefit has always been a huge driver. But what you're going to see as we get a little bit farther into this is that the inflation options that we put into place, which have 3 different component parts, those inflation options are what agents are able to use now to drive premium downward to a price point where affordability lives. And we know that folks are concerned about rising premiums. We know there's a lot of questions about what to do with it. Oh, long-term care is not too, it's too expensive, right? So right off the bat, let's take a second and dismiss that myth. The truth of the matter is that long-term care is about 2 cents on the dollar, and you will see multiple examples of that as we go through this presentation. It comes down to a point in time where clients have to decide what it is they want to do and whether protecting 25 or 30 or 35 years worth of inflation planning I'm sorry, not inflation, retirement planning, whether protecting 20, 30, 40 years of retirement planning is something that they see as being worthwhile. Because if it isn't worthwhile, they're going to get their butts kicked. It's just simply a matter of time. So letting them panic you over this, you don't want to do that. You want to keep coming back to the idea that it's about 2 cents on the dollar. Keep in mind as you have these conversations, okay, you're the only person out there that's reaching out and offering to help them with this retirement planning opportunity, okay? And the simple truth of the matter is that any plan is a good plan, all right? Anything that they put in place by way of a revenue stream that enables them to offset those costs is important. A piece of the overall puzzle that we don't talk about very much, and it all involves, of course, Bob and Carol Davis, our perpetual clients and our perpetual prospects. Okay, what people lose sight of is that they have a retirement plan in place, and if Bob goes on claim and he needs help, okay, unless they have a policy there, that is not only going to require costs to be addressed with regard to Bob's care, it is certainly going to have a negative impact on Carol's retirement. Okay, the plans that they had may get blown to smithereens just because they didn't think it through. They weren't willing to listen to you. Okay, and as I touched on before, this ties to the pennies on the dollar idea. Okay, and I mentioned that we had the different component parts of the inflation construction, if you will, the three-dimensional chests, okay? We've got quarter point increments. We've got 3 different sets of caps. You'll see all of this here. And we have guaranteed buy-up availability. And if you don't use the custom software that we built here at AIM, one of our mad scientist tech folks is phenomenal with this, and they are responsible for that. You want to make a note and download the software from this website right here. Okay, if you're using the StrataCision side-by-side software, you're going to have limitations that they impose. The software that the AIM team built doesn't have those limitations. It allows you to do everything that the product was intended to do. Okay, so here we go. This is a look at what we used to do called the long skinny, and then a look at what we're doing now called the short and fat. All right, and all of this is based on a married couple in the compact states. Both of them are age 60. They're both standard health, and there's a 90-day elimination period. So I would categorize this as being right down the middle of the road. Okay, so now you can see what's on here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading this. I don't need to read it because you can read it faster than I can talk it. So I'm going to let you go ahead and take a minute and do that. But what we're looking at here is a couple different ways to approach one particular thing based on the idea of a policy max of 270K. All right. Going to give you a second to kind of read, see what we're looking at. Okay. The most important thing is the short fat, and we're going to look at short and fat 2.0 here in just a second. All right. You're looking at saving almost $3,000 a year by virtue of reconfiguring it here, getting away from a 5-year benefit period, taking it down, getting away from 5% compound inflation. Nobody sells that anymore. It's all 3% compound or lower, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. That's why we built in those different options to enable you to take it down farther. All right. So now we're going to look at version 2.0 with this. Okay. So kind of what I'd call a modified front load, in that you got the max monthly benefit here at 10 grand, a little bit shorter benefit period, a little bit lower compound inflation rider. But the most important thing is you're able to do this with a high degree of affordability. Now you're down just under half of what we originally started with, and $3,000 or so less than what the original short fat construction is. And keep in mind, and I've talked about this many times before on webinars, and you'll hear me talking about it more today, and that is this idea of about 2 pennies on the dollar. And if you take this 58.25 and multiply it by 2, what you're going to, and actually what you do is you take the 270 and stack it up right below that, and you're going to see that it's about 2 cents on the dollar to put this policy in place. Based on what we're seeing right now coming over the transom, which is a ton of $5,000 a month out of a pool of 180, this is a much more substantive benefit than that. And as you can see here, it's really affordable, and that's what counts, is the ability to get folks to engage with that. Okay, question with regard to inflation protection and partnership. And I'm going to tell you right now, the partnership is over with. Okay, you may not agree, but I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm telling you right now, the validity of the partnership as constructed 15 years ago is off the table. So set the partnership aside, and I'll tell you why in a second. Set it aside and move forward, and don't let that hamstring you, okay? The reason that the partnership isn't valid anymore goes back to what we see every day being sold by agents, all right? Agents are selling $4,500 a month to $5,000 a month out of a pool of 180, okay? Well, as an example, and this is pretty typical around the country, Western Washington, which is Seattle, and the biggest population chunk of the state that we are in, and it's not atypical of Denver, Colorado, and Phoenix, Arizona, and places like that, okay? The cost is significantly more than $4,500 per month today, okay? That is not going to come together. It's going to spread out even more. The point is that when Bob Davis goes on claim, if he's $3,500 behind the cost curve to start with, he is going to rototill significant personal resources before he ever gets to the end of his policy benefits, which is what is required for the dollar for dollar asset disregard to kick into play, okay? So don't, unless your clients are insistent on it. If they insist on it, it's going to hamstring you, you go with it. But if they don't bring it up, you shouldn't bring it up. I'm just telling you, to be honest. You're not going to have any exposure there. You just explain to them that the idea is to put a plan in place that's going to preserve their assets. And I'm telling you right now, by taking the inflation rider down to 1, but giving them a $270,000 benefit pool, you're putting them in a much better position than you would be putting them in if you were talking about a $180,000 pool or a $5,000 monthly benefit. This will get the job done, and it's not going to be a problem with regard to inflation. All right, another look at this. Now, this one here, we got a single female age 60. That tends to be a more challenging group to work with by virtue of the gender-based pricing, okay? So a couple of different ways to set up here for 2.0. This is option 1. We're going to see option 2 in a second, all right? $500,000 pool, $10,000 a month, absolute max, okay? The absolute max. And the cost, as you can see, is less than a penny on the dollar, okay? There's no way that's not a bargain. And the important thing to remember with this, the important thing to remember with this 60-year-old is if you start them off at 180 grand with $5,000 a month and 3% compound, in 25 years, they're still not going to have that. Okay, they're going to be well below that because everything doubles in 25 years. Okay, and so what you're going to have, you may have a higher benefit or a high monthly benefit, but you're going to have a smaller pool. Okay, what you will find over and over and over again is if you front load and just take inflation out of the mix and solve at 500 grand with a pool of 10 grand, the clients are going to be pleasantly surprised with what they're looking at in terms of premium. I see we got a question here. So, well, there's a question about the policy max at 270 stay the same throughout the term. That'll depend on whether they've got inflation or not. With this configuration, it would. Over on 2.0, on the original long skinny, the 270 would be driven by inflation and would double in roughly 25 years. Okay, there is a 75% assisted living benefit available. Again, download the software, take a look at all the different stuff. It's incredibly intuitive out there, and the elimination period is calendar day for all of the different things that we're looking at here. Nobody in the conventional market uses service day for this. Okay, so anyway, that's the 2.0 option 1. So now 2.0 option 2. There we go. All right, a little bit different way to do it. Still gets that price point down by about $1,000, as you can see. A policy max here at 350, and it's important to note the 180 that I talked about before, which is what we're seeing coming across the transom all the time. That's going to double in 25 years. That means that this 60-year-old would have, based on that math, I'm not talking about the 270 here, but I'm talking about what we see coming in the door all the time, okay? That's going to double from 180 to 360 in 25 years. So when she's 85, she would have some version of that and some version of $8,000 a month, okay? If, under today's configuration, not today's pricing necessarily, okay? But what you get into or avoid, depending on your perspective here, when you're looking at 2.0 option 1, 2.0 option 2, is you take what we call the intermediate risk off the table. And the intermediate risk is what happens between age 60 when they buy the policy and age 85, where they've got it in their head based on the conversation with you that they're going to double their benefits. Okay, what if something happens when they're 66? We hear the stories all the time. Okay, and you're hearing more and more stories about early onset Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or whatever. When any of those things happen, okay, when they happen, it's over with. They're not going to qualify for benefits. So if they haven't done something to address the issue prior to that point in time, they're done. Okay, and that's why I talk about that intermediate risk. You totally take it off the table. They've got the whole thing right now. It's not a situation where they're waiting for it to grow from 180 to 350-ish or whatever it is that they're working with. And just for bonus issues, we got a 2.0 option 3. Okay, multiple different ways to do this. Again, can't strongly enough encourage you to download the software and get into that software and spend some time tinkering with different configurations. Okay, and when you tinker with these configurations, you're going to find yourself becoming more and more fluid in the different ways that policies can be put together and still stay, in that affordability range, $5,000 and below, depending on whether it's a married couple and some of the other kind of stuff. So there's just options, and more options available to you. But you're going to have to put a little bit of lab time in, if you will. Put on that white mad scientist lab coat, get in there and spend some time and really tinker with it and come up with, working on your own, come up with a solution that is workable. The nice thing about the way our mad scientists put that software together is if you make a mistake that is contrary to the carrier parameters for the product, you're going to get a yellow error message saying you can't do this or you can't do that. All right, so it kind of guides you back away from those particular things. All right, so it's good. it's self-contained with the ability to keep you out of trouble, if you will. All right, so another option here, short fat 2.0 option 1 here. We're back to a married couple, age 60 with standard health. All right. Again, take the inflation rider off. You kick it all the way up to 500 grand. You take that max benefit up to 10 grand. They've got a banging big policy right there. It's going to come through, and this is each. It's not a shared thing or one of those gimmicky deals like this. Each one of the two of them has that $10,000 monthly benefit out of a pool of $500,000. So they have a combined benefit of $1 million, and their annual premium on this is just going to be over $500 a month, or the annual premium will be $61.76. Now, this is as good a time as any to point out that one of the underplayed options strategically for folks is the 8% savings that they can avail themselves of by electing to pay the premium on an annual basis. Okay, they're going to save a goodly chunk of change by just doing that and getting that thing resolved once a year rather than spreading it out over the course of 12 months. Okay, again, the 50% assisted living, the inflation rider is not on there. Policy max at $500,000, monthly max at $10,000, and you can see here significant savings over strapping that compound inflation rider on for this couple under the original, the old long skinny opportunity, if you will. All right. So take another look here. We've got the 2.0 option 2 for this couple. Again, we're trying to create enough distance between the existing rates at 85.50 and this one here at 66.50 to make it worthwhile. 1% compound inflation rider. Why does that matter? You've seen a couple, 3 of these pop up that way. The reason that matters is by purchasing the 1% compound inflation rider, they avail themselves of the guaranteed buy-up. That means at some point farther down the line, depending on length, the age will depend on how long they avail themselves of the option, but they do have the guaranteed opportunity to buy more inflation any year at the policy anniversary. And that's up until, in this case, the couple reaches the age of 75, the option would fall away. All right, it's built in, so it can't be stripped off, any of those kinds of things, but it does make a significant opportunity available in terms of getting them started here, and then maybe things change, they decide they want more coverage, they can bump it from 1 to 2. They could basically make any change between 1%, which is the floor, and 5%, which is the ceiling. All right, and those are all done on an attained age basis, and it's what they call a sliver premium. I'm not getting into the details, and I'm not solving hypotheticals for you down the road. All I can tell you is that it's much more affordable than you would think that it would be. All right, so 2.0 option 3. All right, another different way to do this, you're still going to be about $1,300 less than what we were talking about, for much less coverage, frankly, than what we were talking about before. So another way to do this, it's a little bit more than what it was with the original configuration of this, which goes back to 2013, but it is substantively less expensive than what the rate refresh new rates were that came out in 2020. Okay, and again, as I said before, taking a minute and going and getting access to the software and spending some time tinkering in your own basement office laboratory would not be the worst possible thing that you could do to get your head around the way to solve for this. That said, when you are engaging with prospects, and we'll talk about that in just a second, when you're engaging with prospects and you want to get an appointment set with them, They're going to ask you about price. And when you tell them it's about 2 cents on the dollar, I can show you more specifically depending on what it is that you would want to put in place, but it's about 2 cents on the dollar. That creates the appropriate and accurate thought process in their minds that it is affordable. And at 2 cents on the dollar, it is affordable. Okay. So I'm going to take a minute here and give you a preview of a webinar we're going to have this summer that isn't even on the schedule yet. And that's about leads versus organic growth on your agency. Okay. The people that are in your universe, the people that you know from church or from the golf, the golf club that you're a member of potentially, or you play tennis with, pickleball. Hell, my wife plays pickleball now. She's addicted to that. So maybe there's a pickleball group in your area, but the people that are in your circle, and that includes neighbors and such, okay, they know what you do. They know that you are an insurance professional. And when I make this next suggestion to agents, I get, oh no, I don't want to do that. Well, I'm telling you right now, those people know what you do, and they are probably more surprised that you haven't approached them and offered to help. Okay, offered to help them protect their retirement plan. They're more surprised by your lack of inertia than they're going to be when you reach out and say, hey, Bob, I'd like to talk with you and Carol next week about a subspecialty that I've developed in my practice that rotates around the idea of protecting retirement plans. There's two massively key things that you need to keep in mind about that entry conversation. Okay, first of all, 9 out of 10 of the people that are in your orbit, the golf club, the church, the pickleball group, whoever it is that you socialize with, your neighbors, folks that your partner works with, okay, all of these folks, 90% of those people have never had anybody approach them with an offer to help them protect their retirement plan. And let's be honest, that's really what long-term care does, okay? So 90% of those people have never had anybody make that offer to them. The fact that you are doing that separates you in a big way, all right? And when you explain to them that it's about retirement planning, you set your appointment for Tuesday night at 6 p.m. You can do face-to-face now. We're back to that. You could do a Zoom call, whatever works. But in the meantime, what you've done is you've quietly planted the seed for some homework on their part. I'm telling you for a fact, they are going to pull out 401k statements and statements with pensions and things like that, and they're going to have that available. They're going to have spent some time looking at that so that they're going to be able to speak with some, I don't want to say intelligently, but they're going to be able to speak factually with you about that, because along the way, you're going to ask them some rhetorical questions about total amount and how much that they anticipate that they're going to have when they reach retirement age, which I think for a lot of folks, it's still 65. Some folks are moving to comply with the new Medicare and Social Security criteria on that, which is stretching it out past that point in time, okay? And probably most importantly, because it's going to make the rest of what you do very easy, the other thing they're thinking about is what I call the number, okay? And the number is how much they think they're going to be taken out every month to live. Okay, if you asked 10 different clients, and if you are attending other webinars I've done and paying attention, you'll have heard this before. If you ask a group of 10 couples what the American dream is to them, okay, you're going to get a lot of different answers. But it boils down to this one thing, and this one thing is it is a well-funded retirement adventure. Okay, and what you're doing is you're offering to protect that. You're offering to ensure that in the very high likelihood that one of Bob or Carol needs help as a result of an unexpected change in their health, i.e. long-term care, and they need benefits, they're going to have a revenue stream in place that's going to allow them to not have that apple cart tipped upside down and blown to smithereens by virtue of this, okay? Because anybody that tells you that their number is $7,000 a month and they think they're going to be able to, and the plan is to sustain that for, let's say 25 years, just to have a number out there. Well, if you change that number from $7,000 a month to $12,000 a month because of cost issues related to unexpected changes in health, i.e. long-term care, you can see that that timeline is going to shorten up very, very quickly. And if you'll remember, way back in the beginning, I said any plan is a good plan. And believe me when I tell you, even if the best that you can get them to step forward with is going to give them $6,000 a month, 15, 20 years down the road, $6,000 a month is a whole lot better than zero per month. And that's how they're going to be set up if they self-insure. So, okay, well, that's the culmination of my work today. The marketing team is going to be reaching out to all of you individually over the next day or so. As a follow-up, we will answer questions about options that we've got. We've got some new options. Pay really close attention to your webinar invitations here coming up over the next 3 or 4 weeks. You're going to see some brand new stuff that I'm dangling in front of you and teasing you with, but not going to tell you about now. But I will tell you that you're going to want to have some time available in the first couple weeks of June to come on board with another webinar or another couple of webinars that we're going to be doing. You're not going to want to miss the opportunity to get up to speed with this. So going to go ahead and unmute folks for questions. If you don't have questions, I'm going to unmute everybody. I'm going to ask that you go ahead and self-mute, and I know a lot of you have already done that, and that way we don't get disturbed by the tea kettle boiling or the dog barking at the Amazon guy or whatever folks have going on. So, all right, y'all have full control. If you have questions, go ahead and unmute yourselves, and we'll see what we can do to answer questions.
How do we do that?
Well, you're unmuted, so go ahead, Barbara.
Okay, great. All these illustrations, are you saying that that was the price for the couple or each one?
Price for the couple.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yes, of course. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mike, you started with June 1 or July 1 as a key date with the group long-term care and Washington starting to actually take money out. Are you going to have kind of a webinar on specific approaches for that with companies?
Well, once we get a little more clarity as to who's coming up next, we will. Right now, it seems as though New York, Pennsylvania, California are all sort of just spinning around in a circle in the harbor. Nobody's really gotten out. So, using a nautical metaphor here, nobody's gotten out of the harbor enough to where we can step up and say, okay, this is what it's looking like for this particular state. And then that's number one. Number two, the construction that New York and Pennsylvania have right now, they're not going to make available what we're calling a runway. Their plan now, and I've been led to believe by some people that know a fair amount about this stuff, that they're going to be disabused of that notion. But right now, they don't want to give the people that live in their states any time to go buy long-term care to protect themselves. They just want to basically slap the tax on them. California, they have 5 proposals in front of the committee. We're waiting to see what happens when one of those proposals spins out, and then we'll have a better idea. Shorter answer to the question, and it's a good question, David. The shorter answer is once we have something that we can really go with for a particular state, we will be blanketing that, believe me.
Thank you.
Of course.
Hey, Mike.
Jeff, good morning.
The short fat concept that you illustrated for the couple included a spousal discount, correct?
Yes, that's automatically factored in.
Right. So the question is, let's say one of the spouses is uninsurable. The concept still works. Like that could have been an individual male, not female. The concept still works, whether there's two insurable spouses or not, correct?
Absolutely. It's just there'd be some modification because you're going to be stepping back from married both, is what I call it, or partners both, or couples both discount, back to couples one discounting. But the concept still works. You're right about that.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thanks.
All right. Good question. Anybody else?
Hi, Mike. This is Maria here. How are you?
Good, Maria. How about you?
Good, thanks. Regarding the short and fat, the 50% assisted living, can you use the other 50% for in-home or nursing home care? Is that what that's relating to?
Well, you can't do that simultaneously, but what it does is it draws the pool down at a slower rate. Okay. So the analogy that I use is it's like eating ice cream with a teaspoon or a tablespoon. All right. If you're using a teaspoon, a half gallon is going to last longer. If you're using a tablespoon, not going to last quite as much, but it does keep the pool, the amount of the pool just comes down more slowly.
Okay. So
All
it
right?
can be used for other than assisted living.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
A couple questions here, and I'm going to go back to this, so give me a second to do that. But I've had a couple questions with regard to going back and giving you access to the software, and rather than reading it and taking forever for folks to get to that, I'm just going to back the slides up here and let you have access to it. And this is the proprietary software that our team built. It's right there. Okay. Now, it's important for you to note, if you have access to our website independent of this, all right, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to stop the browser from auto processing when you type in Y. Click that little red X up there to get it to stop doing that, and then key in the rest of this, or type it in like in a Word box and then slap it in there. Okay, but if you have access to the website, it's going to try to auto populate, and this is actually a satellite of our website, and you won't be able to find it on the site per se. Now, when you get out there, you're going to want to download version, I think it's 3.88. Okay, that's the most current version. It is the Mutual Care Solutions opportunity, and the one that you want to work with is the custom solution. Okay. So now, and I'm telling you this because there are two versions. The other one, the secure, it's a tiny bit less expensive. And when I say tiny, $5 a month, and it's much less flexibility, particularly in these areas here. And you saw a ton of flexibility that we exhibited during the course of this webinar. And that flexibility had so much to do with right here, 1% inflation, 2% inflation, all these different kinds of things, that level of flexibility. So you don't want to give that away by using the secure. Okay. There was a question about having people priced out to the plans due to increases. So I'm not sure if you're talking about existing customers, but if you are on existing customers, we've got opportunities that we can help you with to try to keep things affordable for them. But this was designed primarily to talk about folks, prospects that you've got now that are, they want to talk about long-term care, or you've engaged them to talk about long-term care. All right, other questions? This is good stuff. We don't normally get a lot of questions, so it's kind of good to engage with folks a little bit more and make sure that they come out of these presentations feeling like they got anything that they wanted to cover taken care of. Okay, Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up then. Appreciate everybody making your time available. As I said, we will be following up with everybody that's on the call over the course of the next day or so. If I don't personally have the opportunity to chat with you, some of you, I will be following up with Reed. I'll give you a call here and catch up here. But anyway, if I don't have a chance to chat with some of you individually, please have a safe weekend with the holiday. Hopefully you get some nice weather and you enjoy the opportunity to get away a little bit. With that, we're going to go ahead and shut everything down. Quick reminder, next week on the 31st, we got Anthony Vossenberg and Derek Lape, and they're going to be taking you through Thrivent's long-term care solutions and why these are opportunities that you want to have in your portfolio to help your clients out. So, okay, thanks everybody. We're going to wrap it up. We'll be talking to you soon. Bye now.